He never allowed anyone to touch him. Not without gloves. Not without clearance. Not without purpose. Corvin Hale built $1 billion empire by keeping people out. His board called him precise. His rivals called him brutal. And the press, they called him the man with the cleanest reputation in finance, because no one ever got close enough to stain it. But one night, someone got in. She didn't mean to. She wasn't invited. She wasn't supposed to stay that late. But she did. And 10 months later, she returned. With something that would rewrite everything. Not a headline. Not a lawsuit. A baby. And the look in her eyes said only one thing. You don't get to forget what we created. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where powerful people fall, rise and learn that love doesn't ask for permission. This isn't a story about contracts. This is about what happens when a woman refuses to let a moment be erased. And when a man, used to control, meets the one thing he can't manage, his own future, wrapped in a soft blue blanket. If you've ever been made to feel like a moment was a mistake, if someone looked through you after taking everything real from you, if you've ever chosen silence because it felt safer than begging for space, this story is for you. And if you believe that sometimes love shows up 10 months later, without a warning, without a label, but with undeniable truth, then stay with us. Because this one isn't just about regret. It's about the man who built walls, and the woman who quietly walked through them, carrying their child. The office lights hummed above her like they always did, cold, constant, sterile. It was 10:41 p.m. Everyone else had left. The finance floor at Kepler Holdings was known for its silence after hours. No phones ringing, no executive chatter, just the quiet glow of spreadsheets on flat screens and the soft clack of a tired intern finishing what no one else wanted to touch. Neriah Lowell adjusted her glasses and blinked at the numbers on her screen. Her neck hurt. Her wrists ached. But this, quiet, it was better than home. She didn't stay late for praise. She stayed because no one expected her to talk here. No questions, no guilt, no reminders that her parents stopped checking in after her scholarship landed, that her roommate never asked if she ate, that she hadn't laughed since the 3rd week of the internship, and no one noticed. Here, the silence didn't accuse her. She exhaled, sat back, and rolled her shoulder. Then the elevator dinged, not the side one, the executive lift. She stilled. That elevator only responded to 5 cards in the company, and only one of them stayed this late. Footsteps echoed. Slow, heavy, intentional. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, with the feeling of being caught, not doing anything wrong, just being somewhere she wasn't expected to be seen. He came into view before she could pretend to be busy. Corvin Hale, CEO, founder, obsession of Forbes and Bloomberg alike. Tall, exact, and so sharply dressed it looked like his suits came with contracts sewn into the lining. He looked exhausted. His jacket was draped over one arm. The first 2 buttons of his shirt were undone. No tie. His hair was pushed back like he'd run a hand through it one too many times. He paused outside the shared workspace. She stood to her feet before she could talk herself out of it. "Still here?" he asked. Neriah nodded. "Just finishing data validation." He didn't nod, didn't move, just looked at her for a second longer than normal. "Need help with the system access?" She blinked. "No, I mean, I'm good." But he didn't leave. Instead, Corvin stepped inside the glass-walled space, leaned slightly over her screen and asked, "Then why are you still here?" Neriah hesitated. He didn't look amused. He looked curious. Her voice was quiet. "Sometimes I work better when no one's talking." He gave a small nod. "I understand that." She didn't expect him to, didn't expect him to stay, but he sat, right at the edge of the second desk, not close enough to crowd her, not far enough to dismiss her. He glanced at her screen, saw the thousands of cells in Excel, and said nothing. For a full minute, they sat in silence. Until she spoke. "Do you ever get tired of being around people who only talk when they want something?" His gaze shifted slowly to her. "All the time," he said. She didn't smile. Neither did he. But something shifted. The air didn't feel like office air anymore. She closed her laptop and set her hands in her lap. "Do they ever ask how you're doing?" she asked. "The people who want things." He tilted his head slightly. "You're not afraid to ask that?" "I'm too tired to be." Corvin breathed out through his nose. A sound that might have been a laugh, or maybe relief. "My board doesn't care if I'm doing well," he said. "As long as we're winning. And are you?" He looked directly at her. "Right now?" A pause. "No." Another pause. "Are you?" She lowered her eyes. "I'm still here." That was her answer. And it was honest. That's what made him stay. They moved into his office sometime after midnight. Not with intention. Not with seduction. It was the only room still warm. The only one where the lights dimmed without shutting off. She sat in the chair across from his desk. He poured water from the carafe. No whiskey. No offers. They talked. About loneliness. About what happens when everyone thinks you're okay because you don't cry publicly. About what ambition costs when you have no backup plan. When her voice cracked mid-sentence, he didn't react. He just listened. And when his hand reached out, not for her but for the pen she dropped, their fingers brushed. Neither pulled away. It was quiet. It wasn't rushed. She moved first. Not out of strategy, but instinct. He didn't stop her. Their lips met with hesitation. Then clarity. Then heat. Not messy. Not dominant. Just real. The kind of closeness you don't ask for until the silence gives you permission. The kind that doesn't need words. That night, behind the office door, they didn't make promises. They made room for breath, for mistakes, for something they'd both deny later. They slept on the couch, not even fully undressed, just enough to feel human again. She woke before him, straightened her blouse, smoothed her skirt, brushed her curls back into place. Corvin stirred, but didn't wake fully. She paused before leaving, not to watch him, to remember how it felt to be touched with no agenda. Then she left. She didn't text, didn't email, didn't clear her browser history. When the team asked where the quiet intern had gone, HR said, "Personal reasons." No one questioned it, but Corvin remembered. Not the kiss, not the heat, not even her name at first. He remembered the silence, and what it felt like to be seen without being studied. The next morning, Corvin opened his eyes to soft light slipping through the slatted blinds of his office windows. The city was already alive outside, cars crawling through Midtown, elevators, humming in their shafts, assistants preparing coffee he wouldn't drink. But inside his office, it was still. He reached toward the other end of the couch instinctively. Empty. He sat up, slowly. The water carafe was still on the table. The two glasses, hers and his, stood side by side, one with a lipstick mark, barely visible. Faint, already drying. He closed his eyes. It wasn't a dream. And she was gone. He didn't panic. He didn't curse. He just sat there for a while, then rose, straightened his shirt, ran a hand through his hair, and walked to the executive restroom without speaking to anyone. He showered, changed, put on the face the world knew. By 8:15 a.m., he was back in the boardroom, guiding the quarterly investment review, like he hadn't just broken the only rule he ever set for himself. Don't blur the lines. The day passed in a blur of numbers and projections. His assistant handed him the usual paperwork with the usual questions. He responded with a nod, a glance, a single digit to signal. Go ahead. But sometime around 2 p.m., Corvin stopped at the end of the hallway outside his glass-walled floor. He looked toward the space where interns usually worked. Empty. The desk where she had sat. Clean. Her name tag was gone. The only sign of her presence was a lone post-it stuck beneath the monitor, too low for anyone else to notice. He stepped closer. It read, File 27A was misaligned. Fixed. That was it. No goodbye. No note. Just her usual work ethic, clean, precise, invisible. Corvin didn't ask HR anything for 2 days. Then, during a meeting break, he passed by the department lead and said casually, "What happened to the intern on Finance 4? The woman blinked. "Lowell?" He didn't correct her tone, didn't reveal that he remembered her first name. "She left," the woman said. "Last minute. No real notice. Said it was for personal reasons. Voluntary?" "Yes. Quietest intern we've ever had." He nodded, said nothing else, walked away. But that word, quietest, clung to him, because that's exactly what Naraya had been that night, and exactly what she'd left behind. A week passed. Then, too, he didn't reach out. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know if he was allowed to. She hadn't taken anything from him. No file leaks, no accusations, no warnings of retaliation. She'd given him one night, and left him with silence. And maybe that was her way of protecting herself, or protecting him, or both. Either way, it worked, because nothing happened. Nothing except he couldn't look at the couch the same. Couldn't sit in that chair without remembering her small hand tracing the rim of her glass. Couldn't forget the way she had said, "Sometimes I work better when no one's talking." He thought he'd move on. And outwardly, he did. Deals closed. Stocks climbed. Kepler Holdings stayed pristine. But something inside Corvin stiffened. He no longer stayed late, not because he was avoiding her, but because the quiet now sounded empty instead of peaceful. 5 months later, he stood at a gallery opening, surrounded by powerful people who never stopped talking. His date, a hedge fund strategist, laughed at something he didn't hear. He smiled politely. Across the room, a young woman walked by carrying a baby in a sling. Something in him tightened. He excused himself early. That night, he opened the company employee system and typed in her name, Lowell Naraya. Nothing came up. The record had been cleared at the end of her term, just like every other intern, except he had never wanted her to be just another one. 10 months passed. Life moved. But that night, it never left. It was raining the morning he arrived at Belmont General. His driver had taken a detour, main entrance only. The side VIP wing was under temporary construction. Corvin adjusted his collar and stepped through the glass doors. He didn't expect to see anyone he knew. He definitely didn't expect to see her. Naraya. She stood at the far end of the lobby, near the reception desk. Her hair was shorter now, neatly styled. Her frame was still small but stronger somehow. She wore a plain grey cardigan and jeans. A diaper bag was slung over one shoulder. Her hand gently rocked a car seat carrier. Corvin froze. The world didn't slow down. It stopped. His heart wasn't racing. It was stunned. There was no other word for it. Because inside that car seat, wrapped in a soft blue blanket, was a baby. A boy. Big brown eyes. Full cheeks. Light curls. A pacifier tucked between tiny lips. Corvin couldn't move, but Naraya lifted her head and saw him. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. She nodded once, like she knew this moment had been waiting. He took a step forward, then another, until they stood less than 3 feet apart. Neither said the obvious. Until he did. Naraya. She gave a small nod again. Corvin, his eyes dropped to the baby. She followed his gaze. "This is Kai." He blinked. "Yours?" She didn't answer with her mouth. She answered with her silence. And something in his chest fractured. He didn't ask why she didn't tell him. He didn't demand a DNA test. He didn't ask if the child was healthy, legal, planned, or inconvenient. He just asked one thing: "Can I hold him?" Naraya paused, then nodded. She unlatched the carrier buckle and lifted Kai gently into her arms before offering him over. Corvin took the child slowly, as if holding something sacred. The baby looked up at him and gripped his shirt tightly, like he knew him, like he was home. In that moment, Corvin Hale, the man who never let people get close, felt something crash through his carefully built armor, and he couldn't breathe, because the truth wasn't in what was said. It was in what Kai's hand did, held him. Nerea adjusted the strap on her shoulder and looked toward the hallway. "I wasn't going to bother you," she said. "You didn't." He meant it, but she was already glancing away, not to avoid him, but because her life had moved on. And now he had to decide what to do with the future he was holding. Have you ever had one moment you couldn't forget, no matter how much time passed? Have you ever looked at someone and realized they carried a part of you you never expected to see again? If this story already made you feel something, don't leave quietly. Tell us in the comments, what would you do if you were Corvin? Leave a comment. Like this video if you believe some mistakes lead to your greatest blessings. Share it with someone who believes in second chances. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories where one night changes everything. Corvin Hale didn't sleep that night. He didn't return to the office, didn't call his driver. He walked 5 blocks in the rain with no umbrella and no destination, the hospital wristband still clutched in his pocket. Every deal he'd signed that week blurred behind the image of Nerea's eyes. Not angry, not bitter, just already gone. She didn't ask for support, didn't ask for acknowledgement, didn't ask for anything. And that was what haunted him, because she had every right to ask for everything. But she didn't even ask for his name on the birth certificate. He reached his penthouse at 1:12 a.m. The elevator opened straight into the marble-floored apartment, still glowing from auto lights and untouched glasses on the bar. The city skyline blinked through floor-to-ceiling glass. He didn't glance at it. He sat on the edge of his leather couch, unbuttoned his wet shirt, and placed the folded hospital band on the coffee table. Kai Lowell, date of birth, 10 months ago. Mother, Nerea Lowell. Father, blank. He ran a hand through his hair. The man who built empires couldn't undo one moment, and now that moment had a name, a face, and fingers that had clutched his shirt, like he was someone that mattered. The next morning, his assistant, Margot, noticed he wasn't in by 6:30. He always beat her there. By 9:15, the boardroom was half filled. He hadn't arrived. He finally walked in at 9:32 with no tie and his cuffs unbuttoned. Margot glanced up but didn't speak. Corvin dropped his briefcase and sat at the head of the table. "We're not discussing the Saxby pitch today," he said. A few board members blinked. "Sir, we need to finalize." "It can wait. We'll circle back." "Open with numbers." They complied. But for the first time in 6 years, no one interrupted him to clarify vision or strategy. Because for the first time, Corvin Hale wasn't giving one. His mind wasn't in that room. That night, he found himself at the window again, glass untouched in his hand. What was it about her? Why did she leave so easily? Why didn't she ask for help? Why didn't she demand anything? It would have been easier if she had yelled, or cried, or accused him of vanishing too. Instead, she gave him space, and walked out of it before he noticed he was standing alone. By the 3rd day, he had her full name pulled. Nerea Lowell, 28, NYU graduate, financial intern, quiet record, clean exit, no complaint filed, no email after departure, no request for recommendation. It was like she had planned to disappear before the night even happened. The security team provided limited footage. She left that morning quietly. No one stopped her. She waved at the janitor on the way out. That was it. No drama, no storm. Just gone. Corvin sat in his car outside a local bakery on the Lower West Side 2 mornings later. The same bakery she once mentioned over casual conversation in the office. "They sell these almond rolls that remind me of my grandmother's kitchen. It's my favorite smell." He didn't know why he remembered that, but he remembered. He watched the doorway, waited. At 7:43, she walked out. Baby stroller, coffee in one hand, diaper bag over her shoulder, hair pulled back, head down. She didn't see him. She didn't need to. He wasn't ready to speak. So, he stayed in the car and watched her disappear down the street. That evening, he sat in his living room again, Kai's small cry playing on loop in his mind. Dada. He hadn't said it yet, but the way the boy reached for him, that was more powerful than any word. He felt something stir in his chest, a foreign, anchoring weight. It wasn't fear. It was purpose. At 11:06 p.m., Corvin logged into Kepler's internal messaging server. He opened a blank email to Naraya's deactivated company account. The cursor blinked. He typed 3 words, then deleted them, then wrote 5 new ones, then deleted again. Finally, he sat back, took a breath, and typed, "You didn't ruin anything." He hit send, even if the inbox was gone. He needed to say it. Because maybe the person who carried that night the most wasn't her. By the end of the week, Corvin cancelled 2 dinners, moved a board meeting, and began showing up at odd hours in places no one expected him, not to control her life, but to understand how she lived, where she went, how she carried herself. He saw her at the pharmacy once, picking up formula. Saw her at the park, eyes always scanning, not with paranoia, but with quiet awareness. He noticed something else too. No one helped her, no family nearby, no friend groups, no soft landing. She carried it all on her own, and never complained. That was when the weight in his chest shifted, because now it wasn't just about their son, it was about the woman who raised him with nothing but dignity. On Sunday evening, he called Margot and said one sentence, "Block tomorrow from 8 to 2. Do you want me to tell the board?" No. Click. He arrived at her apartment unannounced. No driver, no press, just him. He stood outside her door, holding a small box. Inside was a quiet offering, not money, not flowers, but something he never gave anyone. His own baby photo, the only one he had. He didn't knock yet. He breathed in, then out. This wasn't a business negotiation. This was him. Stripped down. No title, no power. Just a man standing outside the life he let slip away. Naraya wasn't surprised when the knock came. She had felt it building all week. Not in the sky, not in the weather. In her chest. That strange pressure of someone watching her life from a distance. Not to harm, but to hover. And now the moment had arrived. She opened the door slowly, and there he was, Corvin Hale. No coat, no assistant, just him, and in his hand, a small black box. He didn't speak first, neither did she. The sound of Kai cooing in the background filled the space between them. Corvin looked down at the box, then held it out. She took it without opening it. "What is it?" "My baby photo." Her brows lifted slightly. "The only one I have." "My parents weren't sentimental." Naraya stepped aside. That was all the permission he needed. He entered quietly. The apartment was small, clean, warm. Not cold like his penthouse, not perfect like his office. It felt like home. A lived-in kind of quiet. There were folded blankets, soft toys, bottles drying in a rack by the sink. The light in the living room was low, coming from a single lamp near the playmat, where Kai sat with his feet kicking. When Kai saw him, he grinned. No hesitation, no fear. Corvin crouched slowly. "Hey!" Kai reached for him instantly. Corvin picked him up, held him like he'd been doing it for years. And Naraya watched it happen. "I don't need anything from you," she said softly. He nodded. "I know. I didn't hide him to punish you. I know. I didn't tell you because I thought you'd try to fix it with money." "I would have," he admitted. She appreciated that, the honesty. "But then I realized something," he added. "That night wasn't just a lapse. It was the only real thing I'd felt in a long time." Kai tugged on Corvin's collar. He looked at Naraya again. "I'm not here to reclaim anything. I'm here because I missed everything." She crossed her arms, partly to protect herself, partly to hold herself together. "And now, I want to be part of his life, but not just as a provider, or a shadow, or a weekend visitor." He stood, holding Kai. "I want to earn my way into this room, whatever that means." She looked at him for a long moment, not at his jawline, not at the suit, not at his shoes. She looked at his eyes, and for the first time, they weren't guarded. They were scared, which meant they were honest. She walked over and opened the black box. Inside was a small photo. A boy, maybe 1 year old, wearing a onesie too big for him, staring straight at the camera with wide, silent eyes. "I didn't want Kai to grow up like that," Corvin said, "with no softness, no patience, no one to crawl toward without being pushed back." She closed the box. "You still carry that boy. I'm trying to teach him something new." Naraya looked down. She had questions, fears, boundaries, but she also had Kai's smile, and Kai didn't hesitate. He'd reached for Corvin like it was instinct. Maybe it was. Maybe babies know what adults ignore. She walked to the kitchen, poured water into 2 glasses, and handed him one. "You can come by," she said. "Thank you, but not to play family. Not yet." He nodded. "You show up. You stay consistent. You help, not hover, and you don't make promises you can't keep." He took a sip of water. "I can do that. And you don't make me the intern again," she added. "Don't lower your voice when people ask how we met. Don't turn our son into a footnote." He looked her dead in the eye. "I already lost too much. I'm not hiding again." They sat on the couch later, not close, not far. Kai fell asleep in Corvin's arms, and in that small living room, with no media presence, no headlines, no photographers, something rare happened. Peace, not perfection, but possibility. Before leaving, Corvin set Kai down in his small crib. He turned to Naraya. "Do you need anything?" She hesitated. "No. But if I ever say I do, I need you to believe I'm not trying to trap you." "I'll believe you." She nodded, opened the door for him. He stepped outside, then paused. "You didn't ruin anything," he repeated. This time, she nodded too. "Neither did you." That night, she lay awake longer than usual. Not because of stress, but because for the first time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was full of change, of choice, of a future she hadn't expected, but maybe could accept. Across town, Corvin sat alone in his penthouse. He pulled out the hospital band again, but this time, he added something to it. He wrote one word on the back with a pen. "Ours." Corvin arrived on Thursday at 6:05 p.m. No security, no headlines, just a 6-pack of baby wipes, a box of organic teething crackers, and a soft rattle he wasn't sure Kai would like. Naraya opened the door, already holding her keys. "I was just coming back from the pharmacy." He nodded. "Want me to carry something in?" She handed him the tote without a word. Inside were diapers, formula, and a can of coffee she clearly hadn't bought for herself. They walked up the stairs together. Her place was still as warm as he remembered. A little more lived in, a little more him now too. Kai squealed when he saw Corvin. No hesitation. The boy reached both arms up, legs kicking against the playmat like it was tradition. Corvin laughed, an unguarded sound that even caught him by surprise, and lifted him up. "You always this dramatic?" he asked. Kai drooled on his shirt in reply. Naraya smiled without trying to hide it. Corvin looked over his shoulder. "I still owe you for the almond rolls." She raised a brow. "You remembered that?" "I remember everything you say." She turned toward the kitchen. And he meant it. After Kai was down for a nap, they sat across from each other on the couch. The TV was off. So was the music. The only sound was the rain starting again outside her window and the occasional creak of the old pipes settling into the night. "You don't talk much about your past," she said. Corvin leaned back, fingers tapping the arm of the chair lightly. "There's not much worth repeating." "Try me." He glanced at her, then away. "My father built with power. My mother kept us polished. Our family photos were scheduled like quarterly reports." Sounds cold. It was efficient. She didn't speak. He looked up. "When I was 8, I asked my mother if I could keep a goldfish I won at school. She said no, said I'd grow too attached, and the fish would die." Naraya blinked. "That's cruel." "No, that was preparation." She shook her head. You say that like it worked. He was quiet. Then, it did. Until that night in my office. She exhaled. Do you regret it? She asked, softer now. No. You didn't try to find me. I didn't think I deserved to. That caught her off guard. You think you deserve it now? No, he said. But I want to. The baby monitor lit up. Kai stirred. Corvin stood before she could. I got him. She hesitated, then let him go. A few seconds later, Corvin returned, Key half asleep on his shoulder, head tucked against his neck. He sat back down, shifting gently to cradle the boy, and then a soft knock sounded on the apartment door. Nerea stood, expecting someone. She checked the peephole. Then her face changed. She opened the door only slightly. A woman in her late 50s stood there, bright eyes, sharp tone. Nerea. It's been a while. Hi, Aunt Lise. I was in the neighborhood, thought I'd check in, brought some soup. Before Nerea could answer, the woman spotted Corvin inside holding the baby. Her expression changed fast. Who's this? Nerea stepped in front slightly. That's Kai's father. Lise blinked. Corvin stood slowly, shifting Kai carefully in his arms. Ma'am. The woman looked him up and down. You're the reason she went quiet last year? Part of it, he said honestly. Rich? Yes. Married? No. Famous? To people with money? The woman smirked. At least you're honest. She looked at Nerea. I'll leave the soup, but you call me if anything feels heavy. Don't carry everything alone. Nerea nodded once. I won't. Lise left as quickly as she arrived. After she was gone, Corvin sat again. She always like that? She's the only family who still checks in. She means well, just doesn't trust well. I get that. Nerea sat down again, closer this time. She's not wrong to ask those things, she said. No, she's protecting you. She saw what my last relationship did. Corvin turned toward her. There was someone before. She nodded. Nothing serious. Until he found out I had dreams bigger than his. What happened? He said he'd support me, then slowly tried to shrink me, and I let him, for too long. Corvin didn't respond right away. Then, I won't do that. You already did once. His head tilted slightly. You were my boss. That night happened, and the next week I was gone. You didn't reach out. You didn't ask why. He inhaled slowly. You're right. And now? I won't lose you twice, he said, even if I have to start from outside the door every day. They sat in that quiet for another long minute. Then she stood and walked into the kitchen, returned with something in her hand, his baby photo. She handed it to him. I framed it, she said. He looked down. It was now in a simple wooden frame, sitting behind glass. You didn't have to. I wanted your son to see that his father started somewhere, that he wasn't always a headline. Corvin held it like it might shatter. Nerea sat beside him again. He deserves to know you, but only if the you he gets is the one sitting here, not the one buried in quarterly earnings. Corvin looked at her. I think I need both versions of me to raise him, maybe. But the one who showed up tonight, that's the one I'd let stay. Kai shifted again, small fingers curling into Corvin's shirt. And in that moment, Corvin realized something. He wasn't afraid of legacy anymore. He was afraid of losing the chance to build one that mattered. By Monday morning, Nerea's apartment felt fuller, not with stuff, but with presence. Corvin didn't come with bags or declarations. He came with small things. He fixed the squeaky kitchen cabinet, bought better light bulbs, replaced the bent crib screw without being asked. Always with care, always without making it feel like a favor. Nerea didn't say much about it, but Kai noticed. He clung tighter when Corvin left. And on the fourth morning, he cried, loudly, loud enough that Corvin walked back from the hallway, took him in his arms again, and stayed another hour. At Kepler Holdings, the rumors hadn't started yet. Corvin kept his life tightly locked, by contracts, by loyalty, by intimidation if needed. But secrets always had a way of slipping. And this one came with a stroller. The photo was first posted by accident. A patron at a family-run cafe on 73rd caught the edge of a suited man holding a baby outside a small bakery. It wasn't even a full face, just the jawline. But the caption read, "NYC dads showing up soft. Who is this dreamboat?" #dads of Thessity. Corvin would have never seen it. But someone on Kepler's PR team had a weekly alert scan for unintended exposure. The image landed on her desk that afternoon. She looked twice, then ran it through facial comparison software. 97.4% match to Corvin Hale. By the time Margot brought it to his attention, it had 2,600 likes, and 2 business gossip blogs had screenshotted it. He studied the photo for a full minute. Said nothing. "What do you want to do?" Margot asked. He looked at her. "Nothing." She blinked. "Sir, we can request a takedown." "No, the board doesn't control what I hold in my arms." Margot paused. Understood, but she knew this would become something, not because of what he did, but because of who he was. By the end of the week, a second photo surfaced. This time, clearer. Him, holding Kai in the park. Naraya beside him, blurred slightly by a passing jogger. And then came the headline, "Corvin Hale's hidden heir." Corvin saw it on his phone screen the next morning while feeding Kai banana mash. He didn't react. He just turned the phone face down. Naraya hadn't seen it yet, but she would. He could feel it in his chest, like a clock ticking towards something he couldn't control. It hit her that afternoon, at the pharmacy. A young cashier, no older than 20, looked up as she swiped her items, then blinked. "Hey, are you the woman from the article?" Naraya froze. The girl picked up her phone, started scrolling. There was this photo, and the baby kind of looked like... Naraya grabbed her card and the bag quickly. "Have a good day," she said, her voice tight. She didn't run, but she didn't breathe either. Not until the door closed behind her and she reached the sidewalk. She called Corvin. Didn't yell, didn't panic, but the tremor in her voice was there. "I don't want this to become something you fix." "I won't," he said. "I'll protect it." She was quiet. Then, this wasn't part of the agreement. There was no agreement, he said softly. Only hope. By that evening, she had 3 new voicemails. One from a news outlet, one from her old college roommate, one from a number she didn't recognize that simply said, "Is it true?" Corvin came over around 7. He found her folding clothes at the dining table, Kai asleep in the carrier beside her. She didn't speak when he walked in. He set a bag of groceries on the counter and stood there for a moment, letting her be silent. "I can issue a statement," he offered, neutral, just enough to slow it down. "No, I can talk to the platforms." "No, Corvin." He looked at her. She dropped the shirt she was folding. "I knew who you were when I walked into your office that night, but I didn't agree to become someone they could dissect." "I know. I didn't agree for my son to be turned into a headline." "I'll shut it down." She stepped closer. "What if you can't?" He didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to, but because that was the first question he didn't have a plan for. The next morning, she received a typed letter in the mail from a senior board member at Kepler Holdings. It wasn't signed. It read, "Consider the implications of your public presence. The market does not reward instability. Protect what's left." She folded it quietly and placed it in the trash. At lunch, she sat on a bench in the park with Kai in her lap and texted Corvin 2 words, "Come now." He arrived in under 30 minutes. She handed him the letter. He read it. His jaw didn't clench. His hands didn't shake. He just folded it again and said, "It started." He sat beside her. Kai reached out from the carrier and wrapped a hand around Corvin's finger. "You have 2 options," she said. "Tell me, you walk away before this gets worse, or you step into it with both feet and no mask." His voice didn't waver. "I step in." "You sure?" "Absolutely." "Then stop hiding." He looked at her. "This time, we say it before they do." Corvin Hale stood in front of the mirror in his penthouse bedroom, tying a charcoal grey tie. No stylists, no PR team, no staged lighting, just him. Behind him, the news was already churning. Talk shows speculating, blogs inflaming, anonymous insiders whispering, half-truths about the billionaire, the intern, and the baby boy who looked a little too much like his father. He slipped the tie into place, and for once, he wasn't dressing to close a deal. He was dressing to open a door. At 10 a.m., he arrived at the media suite on the 48th floor of the Kepler building. The room had never been used for personal statements. Only quarterly earnings, only leadership transitions, only sterile soundbites. But today would be different. Margot met him outside the glass doors, face unreadable. "You're sure?" "Yes. You're not obligated to explain." "I'm not explaining," Corvin said. "I'm claiming." She blinked, then handed him the folder. 3 drafts. "I also prepared the usual boilerplate." He shook his head. "No scripts. But I'm not here as CEO today." Margot exhaled, then stepped aside. The room had 3 cameras, 1 live stream feed, 1 mic. Corvin walked to the center, looked directly into the lens, and spoke with no podium, no notes. "My name is Corvin Hale. I've built a career by keeping my life private. Until now, that's worked." He paused. "I'm here because I want to tell you something before anyone else does." He glanced down once, then back up. 10 months ago, I spent one night with someone who changed everything. Not because of scandal, but because she reminded me I was human." Another pause. "That night gave me a son, a child I didn't know existed until recently, and when I met him, nothing else mattered." His voice never shook. "I'm not ashamed, and I will not allow anyone to twist this story into one of regret." He stepped back slightly. "I'm not here to win your sympathy. I'm here to stop your assumptions." Then, one last line. "And if being honest costs me comfort, position, or prestige, so be it. My son will never grow up thinking I hid him." He turned and walked out. No questions taken. No press allowed. Nerea watched the live feed from her phone, sitting on the carpet with Kai. The little boy clapped at the screen, not understanding anything except that his father was talking again. She watched the clip twice, not because she needed confirmation, but because she'd waited months, almost a year, to see if the man who touched her that night in silence would ever speak for her in public. And now he had. Not perfectly, but powerfully. By noon, the internet was on fire. Some people praised him. Finally, a man who doesn't hide his child. More men should claim their kids like this. Others picked it apart. Was this just PR damage control? Where was this energy when the intern vanished? But Corvin didn't respond. Not to tweets, not to articles, not even to investor calls. What he did instead was show up at Nerea's apartment, quietly, no cameras. She opened the door without saying a word. He stepped in. Kai reached for him again. Instinctive, joyful, whole. Corvin lifted him, kissed the top of his head, then looked Nerea in the eye. "I meant it." She nodded. "I know." Later that night, Corvin stood in her kitchen while she folded towels on the couch. He watched her move, noticing again how she moved like someone who was always expecting the next weight to drop. "Nerea," he said. She turned, towel in hand. "If this affects your job, your peace, your safety, tell me." She smiled, tired but sharp. "They already know who I am now. Might as well see how I carry myself. You shouldn't have to carry it alone. I've been carrying since I was 15. You don't have to anymore." She looked at him carefully. "I'm not looking for rescue. I know. I'm offering partnership." That softened her expression. "Say that again," she said. He stepped closer, not touching, just steady. "I want to build a life with you. Not for you. With you." Her hands stilled on the towel. She didn't respond right away, but something in her shoulders eased. At 1:13 a.m., Corvin received a direct call from board chair Ellis Myers. He didn't answer on the first ring, didn't panic on the second. He pressed, accept. I've seen the footage, Ellis said without greeting. Good. It's bold. It's true. You've got heat incoming. Investors don't like unscripted emotion. They'll survive. Ellis was quiet for a beat. This isn't just about appearances, Corvin. We've had calls from 3 clients asking what this means for continuity. And your replacement name's already been whispered if the board calls for a vote. Corvin sat on the edge of his bed, looking out over the city. I'm not walking back what I said. I'm not asking you to. I'm telling you. If you want to stay in power, prepare for battle. Corvin smiled faintly. I've been at war with silence for most of my life. This time, I'm choosing the fight. Click. The next morning, the numbers hit. Corvin's unscripted speech had been clipped and reposted over 11 million times. Hashtags swirled, Hail Air, intern no more, hashtag Real Fathers Rise. Stock prices dipped by 1.7% by opening bell. Not catastrophic, but enough to give the board ammunition. At 10:02 a.m., Corvin walked into the Kepler Holdings boardroom, wearing the same dark suit he always wore for hostile takeovers. This time, the takeover was personal. 10 members sat around the table, eyes guarded, smiles polite. Ellis Myers, the board chair, cleared his throat. Corvin, appreciate you joining us. Corvin folded his hands on the table. You've all seen the footage, Ellis continued. Public image, investor relations, operational stability. These are the issues in front of us now. One member leaned forward. We've worked hard to keep your reputation surgical, precise, controlled. Corvin gave a half nod. You mean soulless? No one laughed. Another voice jumped in. You've brought emotion into a portfolio built on consistency. What happens when clients start walking? Corvin looked each of them in the eye. You're forgetting the bigger picture. Ellis raised a brow. Enlighten us. I didn't take a political stance. I didn't endorse chaos. I acknowledged the existence of my son. Off the record would have been fine, someone mumbled. Then you'd be dealing with a leak and a cover-up. Headlines write themselves. You'd be down 10 points, not 2. Ellis tapped a pen against the table. So, what's your plan? Corvin straightened. Show them I'm still building value, and this time, with principles. The room went quiet again, until Ellis leaned back and said, Let's hope your legacy can carry the weight of your truth. Across town, Naria stepped into a coffee shop just as 2 women near the counter whispered and turned away. They didn't say her name. They didn't have to. She felt it in the shift of their eyes. The tiny pause before the barista asked for her name to write on the cup. Nina, she said softly. She didn't like hiding, but she hated being stared at worse. Outside, she pushed the stroller slowly, unsure if she was safer blending in or standing firm. Later that day, she got a call from a woman she hadn't heard from since college, Layla Bell. They weren't enemies, just distant. But her tone wasn't warm. I didn't realize you were that intern. Naraya froze. Excuse me? From the Hale story. The internet's wild right now. What do you want, Layla? Just wondering what it's like. Knowing the world thinks you trapped a billionaire. Naraya's jaw tightened. I didn't trap anyone. I raised my son quietly while the world ignored me. Layla scoffed. Sure. Until now. Naraya hung up. She held her breath, then exhaled. She would not explain herself to people who never checked on her before she had headlines. Corvin arrived that evening with a soft bag in his hand. What's that? She asked. Clothes for Kai. I picked them myself. She smiled faintly. Brave. He pulled out a navy hoodie with small embroidered stars and a tiny t-shirt that said, My dad owns the elevator. Nerea laughed. Corvin looked at her. You okay? She hesitated. People are talking. Let them. They think I'm a social climber, a plant, a risk. He stepped closer. You're none of those things. They don't know that. He reached out, not touching, but near. I do. She looked at him. I just wanted to work, Corvin. I wasn't looking for any of this I know. He reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed folder. What's that? He placed it on the counter. Full health coverage for you and Kai. Retroactive, anonymous pay-through. No press, no trail. She opened it. Skimmed the details. Perfect. Discreet. You didn't have to. I know. That's why I did. At bedtime, Kai fussed. Corvin offered to walk him. For 20 minutes, he paced the living room with the baby against his chest, whispered to him, hummed something off-key. Kai finally calmed. Nerea leaned against the wall, watching. You don't talk to him like you're learning, she said softly. I don't feel like I'm learning. You act like you've done this before. Corvin smiled gently. I think I was waiting to do this my whole life. The next morning, Nerea opened her inbox to a surprise. A message from Kepler Holdings. Not from Corvin. From legal. Subject line, pending reinstatement offer. She blinked. Opened it. They were offering her a role. Financial strategy consultant. Flexible terms. Remote or in-house. No press required. Full benefits. And a small handwritten note at the end. You earned more than silence. Welcome back. If you want it. No signature. But she knew who it was from. Corvin Hale was no longer the man who only showed up in boardrooms. By the end of the second week, he had memorized the creak in Nerea's hallway floorboards, the drawer, where she kept spare bibs, and the exact bounce rhythm Kai needed to fall asleep without crying. He wasn't perfect. He still overpowdered a diaper once, dropped a bottle cap behind the radiator, and once fell asleep sitting upright with Kai snoring on his chest. But he never made excuses. He showed up. In the early hours before sunrise, at the pediatrician's appointment, Nerea almost forgot. In the aisle of the grocery store when she texted, "Can you grab oatmeal?" He read baby books quietly when Kai napped, watched Nerea fold laundry like it was an art, and learned that showing up wasn't grand. It was consistent. That Friday morning, Corvin sat on Nerea's couch in sweats and a soft grey tee, typing slowly on his laptop. Kai rolled on the playmat near his feet. Corvin looked down every few seconds, watching, alert, not distracted. Present, Nerea walked out of the bedroom holding a mug of tea and paused when she saw them. He glanced up. "We have a mini-meeting in 10. I'll mute if he starts singing." She smiled, soft and slow. "You planning to run Kepler from my living room now?" He shrugged. "It's quieter here." She sat beside him. "Have you slept at your place lately?" He didn't look away from the screen. "No. You going to?" "Don't want to." That wasn't flirtation. It was fact. He took the call. Kai didn't fuss. Nerea watched as the man who once closed billion-dollar deals from a glass tower now presented strategy with a burp cloth over his shoulder. He never apologized for the baby sounds, didn't flinch when someone on the call asked, "Are you working from home?" He simply said, "I'm working from where my priority is," then continued. Afterward, Nerea made pancakes. Kai smeared applesauce on his cheek. Corvin wiped it off with a laugh. "You know," she said, plating his food, "you don't have to keep proving anything to me." He took the plate. "I'm not." She tilted her head. "I'm proving it to myself." Later that evening, they walked together. No strollers, no destination. Kai strapped to Corvin's chest. Sleeping. Nerea carried a soft blanket under one arm, just in case. The sidewalks were quiet. Street lamps flickered on one by one. Corvin broke the silence. "Do you ever miss who you were before all this?" Nerea exhaled. "I think about her sometimes. The girl with big goals and quiet confidence. Do you think she'd recognize you now? She'd be proud I kept going, even when the plan changed." He nodded, then asked, "Would she have chosen me?" Nerea looked at him. "She would have liked how you hold her child." That was enough. When they returned, Kai stirred. Nerea changed him. Corvin warmed a bottle. They moved like they'd done it 100 times. Not perfectly, but in rhythm. After the baby was down, Nerea sat at the edge of the bed and looked at him. "Corvin." He looked up. I need to know this isn't temporary. He stepped forward. It's not. She hesitated. Even if the board forces a choice? He held her gaze. Then they lose me, not you. Nerija stared at the offer on her laptop screen for a long time before speaking. The consulting position from Kepler was real, generous, flexible, fully remote if she wanted it. The kind of role she'd dreamed about before her internship ended without closure. Corvin hadn't said a word about it. He hadn't even hinted. She didn't know if that made it easier or harder. Are you going to take it? He asked quietly that night, Kai already asleep. She didn't answer immediately. They were seated across from each other, half-eaten takeout between them, the baby monitor glowing quietly on the table. I don't know, she said at last. It's a good offer, he said. I know. It's your call. I know that too. She didn't want permission. She wanted clarity, but that had to come from her. I always told myself I'd get there on my own, she said, that I'd build my name without shortcuts or shadows. Corvin nodded. You still can. I don't want to be someone they whisper about. You won't be. I already am. Her voice cracked just enough for him to hear the weight under the words. He leaned forward, voice low and steady. Let them whisper. What matters is whether you're writing the story they're talking about. She looked at him. Are you saying I should take it? I'm saying you earned more than a life in hiding. The next day, she reviewed the contract again. It had no ties to Corvin's department, no direct reporting line, all merit-based. Still, her name would raise eyebrows. Still, she hesitated, not because she feared failure, because she feared looking like she needed his spotlight to shine. Later that week, she met with the director who would oversee her onboarding, a woman named Clarice, who had worked for Kepler long before Corvin ever made headlines. They met at a coffee shop, neutral ground. Clarice extended a firm hand, then said, Before we go further, I didn't hire you to fix a PR issue. I hired you because we read your proposal from last year. The one, no one had the guts to greenlight. Nerija blinked. You read that? Twice. Clarice sipped her coffee. You're better than they gave you credit for. We'd like to change that. If you let us. That night, Nerija came home and found Corvin cooking. He'd burned the edge of the grilled cheese. Kai was in the bouncer, kicking his legs like it was a show. I said I'd have dinner ready by 7, he said, without turning. It's 6:58. He flipped the sandwich and looked back. You okay? She set her bag down, leaned against the doorway. I think I'm going to take the job. He nodded. Calm. Supportive. I think that's the right move. I don't want anyone thinking you made it happen. They can think whatever they want. You and I know better. She walked toward him slowly. Kai giggled behind them. She reached for the second sandwich, took a bite, chewed and said, burnt. But acceptable. He grinned. I'll take that as progress. Later, after Kai was asleep and the dishes were stacked, Corvin stepped onto the balcony with her. The night air was crisp. Their hands brushed, but neither moved away. Nerija turned to him. What happens if they try to use this against you again? They will, he said. Eventually. You still willing to risk everything? He looked at her like he already had, and then said, I'm not risking it, Nerija. I've already chosen it. Have you ever had to decide between peace and progress? Between staying where you feel safe, or stepping into something that might change how the world sees you? If you've ever had to grow under pressure or love someone who needed room to rise, this chapter was for you. Tell us in the comments, would you have taken the job like Nerija did? Like this video, if you believe real support doesn't speak, it shows up. Share this story with someone chasing their next chapter, and subscribe for more quiet, powerful moments that change everything. It began subtly, not with headlines, not with bored whispers, with a knock at Nerija's door. Saturday afternoon, mild sun. Kai, asleep. Corvin, lounging in joggers, flipping through a printout from one of Nerija's upcoming pitch decks. The knock wasn't frantic. It wasn't soft either. Nerija looked through the peephole, then slowly opened the door. A man stood there, early 40s, stocky frame, thick glasses. He held a folder under one arm and a press badge clipped to his belt. "Miss Lowell?" "Yes. I'm Russell Maris, editorial with Midtown Metro. Just a few questions, off the record." Corvin appeared in the hallway before she could answer. "She's not speaking to the press." Russell blinked, clearly recognizing Corvin. "No official comment?" Corvin didn't repeat himself. The door closed gently. But Neraya didn't relax. That evening, she sat on the edge of her bed, while Corvin changed Kai in the nursery. "I thought the statement was enough," she said, staring at her reflection. "It was," Corvin called gently. "For the people who actually listened." She nodded slowly, hands gripping the edge of the comforter. "I don't want to live in a fishbowl." "You won't. They know where I live, Corvin. I'll handle that. I'm not asking for you to fix." "I know. I'm not fixing. I'm securing." By Monday, they had moved. Quietly, without notice. Same neighborhood, 2 blocks over. A walk-up loft with natural light, a second bedroom, and a hallway where Kai could wobble without hitting furniture. Neraya hadn't asked for any of it. Corvin simply said, "We need quiet again." And she said, yes. The loft smelled like orange blossom candles and peace. But peace didn't mean silence anymore. It meant Kai laughing so loud it echoed, Corvin humming during late-night feedings, Neraya testing new recipes and groaning when Corvin tried to improve them. "You don't season tilapia with cinnamon," she told him one night. "I thought it was paprika." She pushed the pan away. "You were raised without hugs, weren't you?" He grinned. "That's low." She bumped his hip. So was the spice choice. Her days became structured but loose. Work calls in the morning, walks in the afternoon, Kai's nap in the early evening, a soft dinner, sometimes a kiss on the cheek when she passed Corvin on the way to the laundry room, and then, sometimes more, a slow lean, a hand resting longer on her waist, a brush of lips that wasn't rushed or claimed, just present. But pressure doesn't disappear. It adapts. On Thursday, she got a message from Clarice. "Your name came up in a partner audit." Neraya froze mid-email. Clarice continued, not in a bad way, "But there are questions. Let's talk soon." That night, she didn't mention it. She sat beside Corvin on the couch, watching a documentary while Kai napped nearby. Corvin turned toward her. "You're quiet." She nodded. Clarice called. He didn't push. "They're asking about me," she added. "Where I came from. How I got here. Do you want me to call them?" "No. Do you want to walk away?" She looked at him. "I want to be able to earn everything I'm building, without needing you to explain it." Corvin reached over, took her hand gently. "You don't need me to explain anything. I know. But some people still think I do." He leaned in, kissed her hand once, then whispered, "Let them wonder. You're not the story. You're the future." The message came on a Friday. No name. Just a number Neraya hadn't seen in over 2 years. "You always had a way of landing on your feet. Still pretending it's love and not strategy?" She stared at the screen for a full minute, then blocked it. But the words clung to her. Still pretending. Still, his name was Darren Lane. They dated for almost a year before she joined Kepler Holdings. He said he admired her drive, said he liked her quiet, said she made him feel grounded. Then he started asking her to dial it back. Not take the harder projects, not ask for raises, not stay too late. "You're not built for their world," he'd said once. "They'll burn you out before you even cash your first check." When she left him, he said nothing, just deleted her photos, unfollowed her friends, disappeared, until now. That afternoon she walked with Kai in the stroller while Corvin trailed behind, taking a call through his earbuds. They passed the same park as always, same bench, same trees. But something in her stomach tightened. At first, she thought it was instinct. Then she looked up and saw him, Darren, sitting across the path in a black hoodie, one leg crossed over the other. face angled toward her like he hadn't been waiting, just expecting. She stopped. He stood, smiled. She tightened her grip on the stroller handle. Corvin's voice trailed off behind her. "Everything okay?" he asked. Darren looked past her, straight at Corvin, then back at her. "This him?" Darren asked, like it was casual. Corvin stepped forward, earbuds out now. "Neriah." She nodded once. Still calm, but cold. "Yeah, this is him." Corvin's posture changed, not defensive, not aggressive, just alert. Darren tilted his head. "Didn't think you had it in you." She didn't respond. Darren looked at Kai, then smiled again. "Cute kid. I can see the money already working." That was enough. Corvin stepped between them without touching him. "You're done," he said simply. Darren's smile faded just slightly. She doesn't need a mouthpiece. She also doesn't need to hear from ghosts. Silence stretched. Darren looked at Neriah again. "You always find your way into power." She met his eyes without flinching. "And you always mistake that for betrayal." Then she turned the stroller and walked away. They didn't talk about it until later. Not in the park. Not on the walk home. But when Kai was asleep and the living room was quiet, Corvin said, "That's the man?" She nodded. "First person who taught me the cost of making myself small." Corvin didn't speak. Back then, I thought if I shrunk, he'd feel taller. If I stayed soft, he'd stay calm. "You don't owe me the details." "I know, but I'm tired of carrying silence." She looked up. "I don't ever want to feel owned again, or doubted, or shamed for rising." "You won't." "I need to hear that from myself, too." He leaned in, voice quiet. "Then say it." She swallowed. "I deserve the life I'm building." "Say it again." "I deserve the love I'm building." This time, her voice cracked. But it didn't break, and neither did she. Corvin found her on the balcony just before midnight. The city stretched quietly below, lights flickering, streets thinning out. She was wrapped in a soft throw, hair loose, eyes on nothing in particular. He didn't speak right away. He just stepped beside her, resting his hands on the railing, waiting for her silence to stretch wide enough to let him in. "You ever think," she began, "how strange it is that I almost didn't stay late that night?" He glanced sideways. "Every day. I thought about going home early. Thought I'd finish that report in the morning. And I almost left before you even noticed I was there. Funny how close we were to missing all this." He nodded. "Close enough to remind me nothing good happens on schedule." Inside, Kai stirred once in his sleep. Neriah checked the monitor, then leaned against the railing again. "I wasn't looking for a forever," she said. Corvin turned fully toward her. "What were you looking for?" A pause. One breath that didn't feel like survival. She met his gaze. "And I got you." He didn't smile, didn't look away. "I was never supposed to stay," she continued. "In your world, in your space, in your arms." "You did. I kept thinking you'd go back to how you were. I thought I would too." She exhaled, slow and full. "But I've stopped waiting for the other shoe." He moved closer. "Because I'm not taking a step back." She nodded. "I know." He reached up, tucked a curl behind her ear. "You changed me," he said. "You gave me room to." The wind passed between them like breath. And then, finally, he whispered, "I love you." Neriah blinked once, didn't cry, didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. "I love you too." There was no kiss to seal it, no swell of music, just hands brushing, fingers lacing slowly, a softness that felt safer than any promise ever spoken to her before. The next morning, he made breakfast, not perfect, but passable. She laughed when he flipped a pancake with too much pride. "You're going to burn that one. It's called seared. It's called tragic." Kai squealed from the high chair. They sat down together like they'd always done it. Because now, they had. Later, Corvin took a call from Ellis Myers. Short, professional. But this time, Ellis didn't mention stocks or headlines. He simply said, "You look different lately. I feel different. You sure this change hasn't softened your edge?" Corvin looked across the room at Nerea. Kai balanced on her hip, laughing at something she whispered. Then he answered. It gave me something sharper. Click. That night, as they laid Kai down, Nerea whispered, "You still scared?" Corvin leaned over the crib, brushing his son's curls back gently. "No," he said, "because I finally know what I'm fighting for." It landed on his desk at 9:03 a.m., a sealed envelope. Thick, heavy, not emailed, not couriered, hand-delivered by someone Ellis trusted enough not to name. Corvin opened it calmly. Inside, an offer. From Roan Stratus Capital, a multinational firm known for swallowing companies, like Kepler Hole, then replacing top-floor names with colder, cleaner ones. It wasn't a hostile move. It was a seduction, a buyout, a soft exit, an open door out of scrutiny, out of legacy battles, out of the noise. And the number attached? Unprecedented. High enough to retire 5 times over. Enough to walk away with his reputation clean, his image intact, and no further questions asked. He read it once, then again, then flipped to the final page. The clause was simple. Final terms contingent on complete detachment from all public affiliations considered to influence corporate perception, including personal relationships that risk board integrity. He didn't need a translation. It meant Nerea. It meant Kai. It meant choose between the life he had built and the love he had finally stopped running from. Corvin didn't answer. Not immediately. He let the paper sit untouched on his desk while he attended 2 meetings, took a call with foreign investors, and reviewed quarterly projections. But all day, the letter pulsed in the back of his mind like a warning. That night, he didn't bring it up to Nerea. He helped feed Kai, cleaned the dishes, and laid on the carpet while the baby crawled over his chest like a jungle gym. She could tell something was off. "You're quieter than usual." "I'm thinking." "About what?" He hesitated. Options. She didn't push. She knew better than to force words out of a man who only ever spoke what he meant. At midnight, after Kai was asleep and she had gone to bed, he walked to the kitchen, stared at the folded letter still inside his coat pocket. He didn't unfold it again. He didn't need to. He pulled his phone and typed 2 lines into a text for Ellis. "They gave me the out. I'm staying in. That's my answer." Sent. The next morning, Corvin poured 2 cups of coffee, placed one in front of Nerea before she even asked, then sat and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, not blinking when he said the number, not gasping at the clause, just watching him closely. When he finished, she asked, "What are you giving up by saying no?" He answered without pause, "Nothing I want to keep." She leaned across the table and kissed him once, firm, slow, final. Not because she was surprised, but because she needed to remind him that choosing love didn't mean losing power. It meant finally using it well. The call came just before dawn. Corvin was already half awake. Kai had stirred twice during the night, and Nerea had mumbled something about needing a day without a screen. The ringtone buzzed low against the nightstand. He answered before it could wake her. Margot's voice came through, sharp, quiet. "You need to come in. What's wrong?" Internal documents were leaked, signed emails, a few from 3 years ago. "What kind of documents?" "The kind that can be spun." He sat up slowly. "And what does that mean for us?" "It means the narrative's shifting. They're calling it a cover-up. Some are asking if the intern's story was a distraction." Corvin exhaled, pressing a palm to his forehead. "I'll be there in 30. He didn't wake Nerea. He dressed in silence, kissed Kai's forehead, took the long way out of the loft so the front door wouldn't creak. By the time he reached the 48th floor, Margot had printed everything. It wasn't criminal, but it was messy. 3 emails taken out of context. One quote clipped to sound like a personal relationship had been factored into a hiring timeline. A legal memo from an external firm questioning the optics of retaining a former intern romantically linked to the CEO. None of it proved anything, but together it looked enough like something to spark noise. "The kind that moves fast. They want a statement," Margot said. Of course they do, and a temporary leave from all public-facing duties until the press cycle clears. He looked at her, eyes steady. What does the board want? Margot didn't flinch. They want silence. From both of you. He stood at the window for a long time, watching the skyline shift in early light. Then finally said, "Draft the statement, but I won't hide her name." Margot nodded. "I figured you'd say that." Across town, Nerea scrolled through her phone. The first notification didn't mean much, just a headline suggestion in the search bar, Hale, former intern, and the paper trail, but then came the second. An email from Clarice. "We're on your side. But take the rest of the week. Let us handle it." And then the third, a message from someone she hadn't spoken to since her freshman year. "Hey, wild stuff in the news. Hope you're okay." That's when she knew. The storm had landed. Corvin returned mid-afternoon. She didn't ask if he was okay. She asked what they'd done to him. "They're spinning history," he said. "And us." He walked to where Kai sat playing with wooden blocks and lifted him slowly, gently, like he needed something to ground him. "They want us to pause everything. Will you?" He looked her dead in the eye. "I'd rather burn the firm down." Later, he handed her the statement. It didn't bury her. It didn't dodge the truth. It said they met honestly, that she left on her own terms, that he didn't chase her, that she raised her child alone for 10 months before ever reaching out, that he never hid her, only waited until the moment felt safe enough to step forward. At the end it said, "This is my family. I will not silence them to protect a perception I no longer respect." She read it, folded the paper slowly, and whispered, "I've never been protected like that. You shouldn't have to be." The email came from inside. Not anonymous, not vague. Signed, Ellis Myers. Subject, unprecedented pressure. Tone, professional. Controlled, deceivingly calm. "While we acknowledge your decision to speak freely, we're facing significant external pressure from stakeholders to reconsider internal affiliations that may continue to compromise the firm's position. A closed-door vote will be held Monday to discuss the future direction of Kepler Holdings. No direct threat, no explicit removal, but Corvin knew exactly what it meant. A vote, a potential push, a shift in control, away from him. He didn't call anyone. He didn't schedule a meeting. He stood in the silence of his office and looked around at the empire he built, not with inherited power, but with sacrifice. And yet, the moment he chose truth, they called it instability. Meanwhile, Nerea entered Clarice's office. It was supposed to be a check-in, a short discussion about redirecting tasks while the storm blew over. Clarice stood when she entered, closed the door behind her. "Before you sit, let me be honest," she said. Nerea paused. "I've been getting questions about your work, your history, your relationship." Nerea nodded slowly. "I assumed as much. They're not accusations, but they're waiting, watching, for a slip. I haven't made one, I know. But in times like this, even a shadow looks like a scandal." Nerea didn't sit. "So, what are you saying?" Clarice hesitated, just long enough. "I'm saying you should consider stepping back, quietly. For now." Nerea blinked. "I was asked to come back. Now I'm being asked to disappear? It's temporary. No, it's strategic. And it always is when a woman like me is close to something powerful." Clarice sighed. "Nerea, I respect you. Then stand with me. Don't suggest I shrink to make your hallway more comfortable." Silence. Then Clarice said quietly, "If I do that, I'm putting my position at risk too." Nerea nodded once. "Now we're telling the truth." That night, Corvin came home to find her already packing a box. Not her things, just Kai's toys. Organizing. Steady hands. Quiet face. "You okay?" he asked. "I had a conversation today." He didn't press. She told him anyway. "They want me small again." His jaw tightened. "No one owns your place here." She looked up. "I know that now. And that's why I'm not afraid." He stepped closer. "So, what are you thinking?" She looked him in the eye. If they vote you out, what happens next? I build again. And us? His reply was quiet, sharp, sure. Never up for vote. Monday morning didn't come with chaos. It came with silence. No flurries of gossip in the hallways. No fiery debates in the boardroom. Just silence. Like the calm before the thunder. At exactly 9 a.m., the 12 executives who held voting power inside. Kepler Holdings filed into the conference chamber on the top floor. The blinds were closed. No assistants were allowed in. No phones. No recordings. Just paper ballots. And pressure. Corvin sat at the head of the long walnut table, unreadable as ever. Beside him sat Ellis Myers, the man who had once called him the most visionary founder of their generation. Now, Ellis avoided his eyes. On the 10th floor, Naraya stood in the hallway with Kai on her hip. She wasn't meant to be anywhere near the boardroom, but she came anyway. Not to interfere, to be visible. Clarice passed her, avoiding eye contact. Naraya didn't move, didn't flinch. She whispered to Kai, "You okay, bub?" He reached for the bracelet on her wrist. She smiled. "Yeah. I think we are too." Inside the chamber, the vote began. Each executive was handed a folded ballot. The question was simple. Do you support retaining Corvin Hale as CEO of Kepler Holdings in light of recent events? Yes or no? Anonymous. Brutal. Corvin watched as each hand moved. Some steady, some hesitant. No one looked at him. He didn't look at them. He stared out the window, even though the blinds were shut. He was done begging people to believe in him. When the votes were collected, Ellis stood to read them. He cleared his throat. 12 ballots received. Majority required for continuation. He opened the first. Yes. Second. Yes. Third. No. Fourth. No. Fifth. Yes. The rhythm slowed. Sweat beaded down one man's temple. Ellis read the 6th. No. 3-3. Then 7th. Yes. 8th. Yes. 9th. No. 4-4. 10th. No. Ellis paused before opening the 11th. His fingers shook slightly. Yes. 5-5. One vote left. 12. Ellis opened it slowly. He blinked. Then looked at Corvin. Final vote. Yes. Corvin didn't move. Didn't react. Ellis cleared his throat again. The board has voted 6-6. As per Kepler Charter, a tie reverts to founder's status. Mr. Hale remains CEO. Corvin stood. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply collected the leftover ballots, walked to the shredder in the corner, and fed them in, one by one. Outside, Naraya saw the first person exit, then the second. She caught Clarice's eyes. Clarice slowed, then stopped. "He won," she said quietly. Naraya nodded. Clarice added, "But it was closer than you think." "I know." Then Clarice said something Naraya didn't expect, but he didn't flinch. Back in Corvin's office, Naraya laid Kai down in the quiet room. He stood at the window now, looking out, like the city itself had just asked him for his final answer. "You good?" she asked. He nodded, then finally turned to her. "They tried to decide who I was without ever asking who I became." She crossed to him. "You know what I think?" "What?" "You became someone who told the truth when it could have cost everything." He exhaled. And this time, when he looked at her, he wasn't the CEO. He was just a man who hadn't lost the one thing that mattered most: her trust. 3 hours after the board vote, Corvin walked into the main floor of Kepler Holdings, not through the executive elevator, through the front, past every desk, every whisper, every glance. He wore no tie, no coat, just the man who built this place. Walking through it, like he owed no explanation anymore. He paused at the welcome desk, where Naraya once sat. The new receptionist smiled nervously. "Mr. Hale, do you need assistance?" He shook his head. Just passing through, but he wasn't. He was heading to the media room, where the company was waiting for its first all-staff address since the scandal. where legacy would be spoken into reality or buried. Neraya stayed upstairs with Kai. She held him tight, watched the live broadcast on the internal screen, and waited. Corvin stood on stage with nothing behind him except the Kepler logo and a blank white screen. He didn't start with pre-written notes. He didn't open with apology. He opened with truth. I built this company 12 years ago, not because I wanted to be rich. I already had money, not because I wanted a name. My last one gave me power. A pause. I built it because I wanted to prove that it was possible to lead without lies, to be ambitious without cruelty, to compete without burying people in shame. He looked straight into the camera. I failed at that when I made her leave. Every staffer watching from their desk knew who her was. And they kept watching, because this was no PR stunt. This was Corvin Hale doing what none of them expected, taking public responsibility. He continued, I let fear write my decisions, fear of how the board would see me, fear of scandal, fear of what the press would twist. Another pause. I will not let fear name my legacy. He tapped a button. The screen behind him lit up. A new title appeared. Kepler Family Initiative, built for the ones behind the scenes who built us. He explained it calmly. A new fund, not for startups, not for investors, for the forgotten employees who held Kepler together during scandal, mothers, caregivers, interns, and those quietly dismissed for being inconvenient to the firm's optics. The fund would be overseen by a non-executive panel. Neraya's name was on it. So was Ellis. So was the new mailroom staffer who once stayed overnight when a system crashed. Back upstairs, Neraya's hands tightened around Kai. She didn't cry, but her chest moved like she had just taken her first full breath in a year. Back in the media room, Corvin closed with this. We win nothing if we keep hiding the people who made us better. Today, I ask for nothing. Not your applause, not your forgiveness. He stepped back. I ask only that you never again stay silent when someone is treated like they don't belong. He walked off stage. No music, no staged applause, just the kind of quiet that felt real. That night, Neraya stood at the rooftop garden of the building. Corvin joined her there. I wasn't sure if you'd come up, she said. He replied, I wasn't sure I was allowed to. She turned to him, steady. You earned it back today. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a velvet box. Not a ring, a key. To what? She asked. He held her gaze. To a home that's waiting to be real, not rented, not hidden, ours. She stared at it, then at him, and finally took the key. With one hand, and with the other, she reached for his. The lights inside Corvin Hale's private office were low, not dark, not sterile, soft, warm, like the inside of a memory. Neraya stood in the doorway, Kai asleep against her chest in a grey wrap. His small hand clung to her shirt, his cheek pressed against her heartbeat. Corvin was at the window, his jacket off, sleeves rolled. He turned when she entered. Neither of them smiled. Not yet. Just stillness and presence. That was their language now. No rehearsed lines, no grand gestures, just the space to show up without defense. She crossed the room slowly. He reached out, one hand brushing Kai's back, then settling on Neraya's arm. He looks like you, Corvin murmured. You think so? I know so. Neraya breathed deeply. He gets quiet when you're near, she whispered. Corvin looked at his son, asleep in perfect peace on her chest. I get quiet when you're near, he answered. There were no more interruptions, no buzz of PR calls, no board updates, no guarded assistants at the door. Just them, in the office where everything once went wrong, and now, maybe, it could begin again. Corvin walked to the desk. On it, a wrapped envelope. No branding, no signature. Just 2 initials, KH. He handed it to Neraya. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside, a notarized document. Full legal transfer of primary legacy beneficiary rights. Underneath, Kai's name. Corvin had legally named him as first heir to his entire private estate. Not just Kepler stock, everything. His personal investments, the brownstone, the land in Maine, his intellectual rights, his private philanthropic fund, all tied to the son he hadn't known he had, but had chosen now with clarity. "You didn't have to," she whispered. "I know," he said. "That's why it matters." She stared at the paper. 1 year ago, she had walked out of this building with nothing but exhaustion and a secret she hadn't known how to carry. Now she stood here with a child, with a future, with the truth in her hands, named, signed, and witnessed. "I don't want him to grow up thinking power is owed to him," she said. Corvin stepped closer. "He won't. He'll grow up seeing what grace looks like when it chooses justice." She turned her face toward him. "You talk like someone who's ready to be a father." He didn't blink. "I am." Outside the window, the city sparkled against the glass. But inside, the only thing that mattered was the three of them. No cameras, no headlines, no secrets. Just one man who had failed publicly and risen privately. And one woman who had never stopped being the story's strongest truth. Corvin reached for her hand, careful not to jostle Kai. Neria didn't hesitate. Their hands folded together, gently, firmly, like a choice made and sealed. "I was wrong to let you walk out," he said. "I was right to do it," she replied. Their eyes met. No anger, just mutual truth. "I don't need grand promises," she said. "I need consistency." "You'll get both," he answered, quiet but sure. The baby stirred slightly. Neria rocked him with instinctive rhythm. And Corvin just watched what legacy really looked like. Not in contracts, not in architecture, but in a woman who carried everything with grace, and a child who slept without fear in her arms. He took a slow breath. "Stay," he said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a plea. It was the sound of a man who was no longer afraid of what staying meant. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She laid Kai down on the couch gently, still asleep, and turned back to Corvin. Their kiss was soft, unhurried, no fire, no rush, just two tired hearts remembering what it felt like to be safe again, and to finally choose love in a room where it was once denied. Corvin Hale sat cross-legged on the living room floor, not in a suit, not behind glass walls, but barefoot, in a navy tee and cotton pants, stacking soft blocks beside his son. Kai, now 8 months old, sat wobbling between Corvin's knees, grabbing one block with both hands, giggling when it toppled sideways. Neria watched from the couch. No camera could have captured this better. Because this was the picture of legacy no magazine would ever print. Corvin reached out and guided Kai's hand to place another block on top. "Like that," he said, voice calm. Kai laughed again, then smacked the tower down with glee. Corvin grinned. "Okay, so we're rebuilding. I can work with that." Neria covered her smile with her palm. This wasn't the man who once thought love could be scheduled. This was someone becoming whole through presence. Later, as Kai napped in the nursery, Corvin stepped onto the penthouse terrace with Neria. The sun was setting behind the skyline. He handed her a drink, her favorite, remembered from months ago. "I was supposed to be a better man when I had everything," he said. "Turns out, I only became one when I had nothing." She looked at him. "You still have everything. You just see it now." He nodded slowly. "You're not staying because I earned you. You're staying because I finally understood what it means to show up. And because," she added, "you didn't try to buy your way back. That was it. That was the lesson." Corvin reached into his pocket. Small box, unmarked. He opened it. Inside, not a diamond ring, but a thin silver bracelet engraved on the inside with one line. "The moment you stayed." He didn't put it on her. He offered it. She took it without hesitation and slipped it on herself. Because this time, everything was mutual. Later that night, they sat on the couch, Kai asleep between them. Corvin watched him breathe. "You once asked me what kind of father I wanted to be," he said quietly. "I think I found the answer." Neria turned. What is it? He looked at her, voice steady. One who listens. She didn't speak. Didn't need to. Her hand reached across Kai's little chest, touching Corvin's. And for the first time, they all rested in the same space, without running, without guarding, without fear. Some legacies are born in boardrooms, others are made in moments like this. They say success is measured by what you leave behind, wealth, titles, power. But sometimes it's simpler than that. It's the child who lights up when you walk into the room. It's the woman who trusted you with a second chance. Not because you said the right words, but because you finally showed up. Tonight, we saw a man rebuild everything he thought he lost. Not with money. Not with grand gestures, but with presence, consistency, and truth. And we saw a woman who didn't need to shout to be heard. She walked away quietly, and returned only when respect matched love. That's the kind of story we tell here. Because on this channel, legacy isn't measured in luxury, it's measured in love earned honestly. If this story moved you, if you believe second chances must be earned, if you know that real men don't just apologize, they grow and stay, then this is your space. Subscribe for more stories where quiet strength changes everything. Hit the like button if you felt even one scene in your heart. Drop a comment if you've ever been denied, dismissed, or finally seen. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs to know. The future doesn't always arrive with a plan. Sometimes, it shows up wrapped in a tiny blanket, calling you to become more than you ever were.